Cthulhu, I hope I'm saying that right, they just added some things to it in post. They couldn't wholesale change it to make it look more like it, but they added things to it to make it look close enough to it.
Well, another thing, though, is that the director, this bothered me a little bit, but it's whatever. It's his movie. The director went on. So I was talking about this movie online. I reviewed it. I'm talking about it online. And I was just saying, like, to everyone that I thought this was Dagon and those were his deep ones. Even though it has some tentacles, it struck me more as Dagon than Cthulhu, and the association with the deep ones, if you will, those fish monster clingers, right? Someone actually brought up an article to me that the director went on record saying that it was Cthulhu.
No, it became Cthulhu when he was really deep into post-production. And
right,
so,
but he went on record.
Yeah,
of that
because
he called it that.
But I just said that Andy Muschietti came and said, "Hey, that'd be cooler instead of being the behemoth, this squid creature. You make it into." So he went into this not thinking it was, but after some talks with some directors, and they were like, "Oh, let's make it a little more mystical." They changed it. That's why you think it looks like Dagon, because they didn't go into it trying to make it look like Cthulhu. So now they're saying it is him, but it doesn't look like it because they didn't have the money to change all the CGI to make it look closer looking.
But I wish he just said it was Dagon and just said Dagon had tentacles.
I mean, I pulled up some images of Cthulhu, and it's for a non-Lovecraft. I don't know anything about Lovecraft, but for me, looking at the two pictures, I'm like, I get it.
But Dagon's associated with the deep ones, though.
Yeah, but this movie wasn't about any of those. This was just about a behemoth that had things draped on him, and then someone later on just said, "Hey, you should just turn this into this and make those that." And he's like, "Okay, cool," because this movie was delayed for a long time. I mean, this movie was delayed for years. So I guess you're saying it doesn't look like him, but like I just think
no. What I don't like is that he went on record calling it anything specifically.
I mean, but
he's saying something after the fact, and he's denying you of what you interpreted based on the product that he gave you.
It never bothered me. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I think John's gonna like this.
Like, I loved it. Yeah. Let me be clear. I love this movie. I love this movie up and down. I just wish that he just, it's some Lovecraftian monster, and didn't give it a specific, because it just, I had people attacking me, Mark. I had people attacking me on the line. They're like, no, it's this. He said it. And I'm like, whoa, but it looks like this. It's okay, I guess so. Whatever. Yeah, people were jumping all over me. I'm like, can we just like this film together? Yeah. Can we just like this film?
I have a question, John. With Lovecraft, are you into him more than most people?
Than most people. I think most people have never read any of his stuff or realized.
For most people the people who know about Lovecraft, are you into Lovecraft more than them?
It's tough to say. I specifically love Lovecraftian movies, and I recognize his icons and themes more from the movies. I read some of his work once when I was in high school. So I'm not as much on the literary side.
Got it. And you just like the look of his creatures in the movies.
Yes. In old comics, they use his monsters a lot in Dungeons and Dragons, even in the 1970s iteration of Dungeons and Dragons. So I always liked them from that too. That's kind of how I learned about them.
I guess I wouldn't have cared one way or the other. I guess he just pulled a late audible and said, "Oh, screw it. Let's just make it this." So I guess you can like it. I guess you can't, but it's still a neat design. I like the look of these clingers. I like that you could, we'll talk about, we have a whole other tournament to go on to here, but let's just say that Underwater's moving forward. We're down to 8. Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll declare a winner. How's that sound?
All right.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and it's down to 8, and I think we should get this going. What do you think, John? You ready for the next matchup?
I'm raring to go, man. I've got side bets going on. I'm like the crowd in Bloodsport or Lionheart, trying to get that long-haired dude who's pushing Van Damme in the water to win.
I'm the crowd from Hot Shots Part 2. I'm going gummy bears, sprinkles, sprinkles. All right, so we got an intriguing matchup here. We have the Lighthouse versus 47 Meters Down Uncaged. And I did some neat research into the Lighthouse and how they came up with stuff. And one of the guys Vico Shirabani did a lot of the effects on it, but there's a guy named Adrian Morat who worked on Crawl, of course, that's why this movie looks so great, but he also worked on Martyrs.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
2008 or 2015?
Oh, the original. And he also worked on Death Race, which is a movie we just talked about. And he does a lot of models and practical effects. He also did Warzone, 300, and Battlefield Earth, but don't hold that against him.
Punisher Warzone?
Yeah, Punisher Warzone.
Love that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And so very talented cast. Robert Eggers knows exactly what he wants. You know, they did a lot of work in this. There's entire articles, and part of the language here, but there's entire articles about this mermaid's vagina. If you type that in Lighthouse, there's entire articles. They're like, we're looking at oysters, we're looking at this, and it was all when Robert Eggers makes a movie with The Lighthouse, or the Witch, they built those sets with only tools that you had back then. He thrives for authenticity, so it came down to just being authentic as possible with these mermaids. And I like it, but I got to go with the 47 meters down on caged sharks because I came across an epiphany here. There's a beautiful article from The Ringer, and where they talk to this marine biologist who works at Florida International, like FIU, I think, one of the universities there. But he talked about how, obviously these sharks are blind. They've evolved over many, many years. I don't know how they're eating. I don't care. But they brought this up. 47 meters down on Caged is basically The Descent, but with sharks. Not quite.
Sure. It's the numbers of the monsters are the biggest difference, but I feel that. I get that. The more I think, I'm not even thinking like I'm just getting bombarded by scenes, and it's like, I get that.
I just love the looks of these sharks, though, John. I like the first 47 meters down a lot, but these things are just these blind. What I like most about they're pale. What I like is how scarred up they are. I feel like they've cannibalized each other throughout the years. And these things just look like they have seen things in these caves. And I like the way, this is a $12 million movie. This is not expensive. And they shot the entire time underwater, which means it's much more expensive with the camera, the divers, everything, the safety. So for these sharks, for these excellent shark scenes that they got, for $12 million. I love these sharks, man. I mean, I don't think the writing's as good as the first film, obviously, but these sharks are what sell it for me. And they remind me of the crawlers from The Descent.
I'm with you. These things look and behave awesome. They're a little inconsistent with their behavior, but I'm blaming that more on the writing. Just like, again, like you say, what are these things eating? The evolution line, even though, whatever, a teenager said it, like maybe we're not supposed to believe that's totally credible, but that doesn't really make sense either, given their population and the amount of time that would take. But they're so cool. Like someone could have just changed the writing and gone piranha and been like, oh, millions of years ago, some sharks must have been isolated in this underground water cave system. They must have been eating, insert something here. And then when we were blasting to get into this submerged city, that must have opened it up. Like, and then it's all solved, right? This is an easy writing fix. I think the writing was just a little lazy about what they were and how they got that way, and so, but they again, I'm with you. They look so cool. I think some of those scratches, by the way, they looked like there were sets of deep thrashy cuts. I almost wonder, was that from thrashing in a fight with another shark and just scraping across some of the stone or statues? And interesting about those cuts is they almost made them look just like 10% zombie-ish. These things look like cuts that never fully healed and have a mild festering quality about them. They look like they would hurt still. In their eyes, sure, that just looks cool. Everyone thinks that a cool blind monster with no real thought process is terrifying. That's just always cool. So yeah, this was neat. Again, I hate the writing. I do, but I enjoyed watching this, a lot more than I thought I would, especially when the premise was revealed in the first, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
A lot more than I thought I would. There were some great shots.
I love the 47 meters down, flare shots. Those make me happy. I dig those. And so, listen, The Lighthouse was made my top list of 2019. When I turned in my nominations to the Georgia Film Critics Association, I had Willem Dafoe as Best Supporting Actor. I mean, The Lighthouse is clearly a better film, but I just love sharks, and I love The Descent, and that's why these sharks are moving to the next round. I love them.
Again, these are the monsters you celebrate, right? I picked The Lighthouse over Witcher because they had the mystique versus a scene worthiness. And this, the sharks are this is like Crawl. we are celebrating these creatures throughout the movie. In The Lighthouse, we are punctuated with some really cool, thought-provoking mystique, but we aren't like kicking at the screen, getting excited. Like, you get in this. This is like a Rocky movie of monsters.
Yeah, I was really happy. I left on a high after seeing these. And then they get out of the caves, and then they have to battle other great whites, and that just made me laugh too. It's so cheeky.
So again, I didn't like the writing, but I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. But is it a popular opinion that I think that Part 1 was much, much better?
Yeah, and meaner and twistier.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to say it. I love that flare shot. In my head, it's iconic.
In the first one, they tried to kind of mimic the flare shot in the second movie. And whatever, it looks fine. If I didn't see the first one right before, I'd be like, okay, that's an okay shot. Instead, I'm just like, oh, you totally failed to recreate that.
Yeah. And I mean, the first one's better. That's the consensus. Because it's a good movie. It's a gut punch of a movie. And
I only watched Part 1 because I wanted to see it before seeing Part 2 for this pod.
Yeah.
I had constantly, you always raving about, I'm like, I don't know if I almost always come back to you, Mark, and I say, God, you're right. I really like that. You are really on point most of the time for the movies that I am afraid to watch. And when I saw 47 Meters, that like Mandy Moore in a shark movie, I'm just like, come on. I loved 47 Meters Down.
I mean, she's a good actress. You hire good actors, and you have good sharks. You have a good movie for the most part.
You hire good sharks.
Yep. I mean, there's casting process for this. All right, so that's moving on to the next round. We got 47 Meters Down on Cage beating a Lighthouse. We love the Lighthouse, but more creatures are in 47 Meters Down on Cage. Now we got Sea Fever versus Screamers or Island of the Fishmen. John, these are two movies you introduced to me. Tell me who should win and why they should win.
I'm just curious, by the way. I've asked you this about a few movies. When I recommend some of these weird movies to you, I'm like, Mark, do you regret watching the movie that I suggested to you? What were your feelings about Screamers?
It was fun. It was fun. It was good.
Okay, it's like I never need to watch it again.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. I never need to watch it again, but I'm glad I saw an Italian adventure fantasy horror movie.
Well, and that's also too, man. I don't ever like thinking I'm above anything, and I've never watched an Italian Fishmen movie before, and I think it just helps open up your world to more cinema. So Barbara Bach's in it. That's cool. So I mean, it's just a neat. I don't know. It's fun to watch, and I like the sea beasts, but Sea Fever, man, that sea creature's next level.
Yeah. For me, in both of these, we see a lot of creature, but this, Sea Fever has that. And again, for me, it's almost like this. It makes me think of Greek mythology made biological. Like I just loved that. I thought it was spectacular. Plus, that is a movie that I paid to rent. It wasn't cheap. I think it was like $7 or $8 to rent it. And now I'm going to buy it. Like, I want to own that movie. It's not underwater good. Okay. It's not there, but I really like this movie. This is like a Leviathan or a Deep Star 6 for me.
It had a tiny budget. It's hard to compare. And I love how big that creature. Do you think that it thought the boat was a whale? Because they weren't allowed in that area to go into. Do you think that thing thought? Because remember, that was one of the theories.
So I don't necessarily think that it thinks. I think that
you know what I mean.
Reacts. Yeah. Like there was a moving thing, and that stimulus elicited it to try to attack it and feed on it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm leaning on that. Like, yeah, it could have attacked that by the same manners by which it would attack a whale.
Huge.
That thing must have been like, I don't know, 50 or 100 feet across before its tendrils started to emanate. When she was swimming towards that thing, it was gargantuan.
What did you think about the water tank and how it kind of cannibalized itself?
Oh, when it was reproducing?
It was a bunch of little creatures and became one big creature.
Right. And and that big creature almost made me think of the larval thing that they found on someone in Underwater too.
Oh yeah.
Just like one of those early metamorphosis stages of something. It makes sense. It's like if you have a praying mantis egg case and you have it in a jar and they hatch and they're all out and there's 50 or 100 of them, you know what's going to happen in 3 days? There's going to be about 20 of them and they're going to be about twice the size.
Yeah.
And in another 3 or 4 days later, there's going to be about 2 or 3 of them and they're going to have doubled in size again. And that's just what happens. Nature Nature isn't very kind. So often, you know, you'll see people on social media say humans are the only species on the planet that